Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. Those were the words my husband David spoke to me on a Tuesday evening in March. Words that shattered my entire world in 3 seconds. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 38 years old, and for 12 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage. David came home from what I thought was a routine doctor's appointment, but the moment I saw his face, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. He sat me down on our bed, took my hands, and told me he was dying. "The doctors found a tumor," he said, his voice breaking in all the right places. "It's advanced, stage 4. It's spread everywhere, Sarah." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My David, my strong, healthy, 42-year-old husband was dying? He showed me the papers, medical documents with his name on them, words like metastatic, inoperable, palliative care. I didn't understand most of it. I just knew what it meant. I was going to lose him. "How long?" I whispered. 6 months. Maybe a year if we try aggressive treatment. But Sarah. He looked at me with those blue eyes I'd fallen in love with 13 years ago. "The treatment is expensive, really expensive. Insurance won't cover most of it." "I don't care about the money," I said immediately. "We'll figure it out. We'll sell whatever we need to sell. We'll do whatever it takes." He pulled me into his arms, and I felt him shaking. Or maybe I was the one shaking. I couldn't tell anymore. That night, I lay awake next to him, listening to him breathe, wondering how many more nights I'd get to do this. Wondering how I was supposed to survive in a world without David. I'd met him when I was 26. He was charming, successful, everything I'd dreamed of. We built a life together. I'd started a small marketing consulting business that had grown into something successful. We'd bought a beautiful house. We'd talked about having children. And now, all of that was ending. The next morning, I started making calls to doctors, to insurance companies, to anyone who could help. The treatment David needed, experimental immunotherapy combined with traditional chemotherapy, would cost $480,000 over the next 6 months. Our insurance would cover maybe $80,000 of it. That left $400,000 we didn't have. But I was going to find it, because that's what you do when the person you love is dying. You do whatever it takes, even if it means destroying everything you've built. I sold my business first. The marketing firm I'd spent 10 years building from nothing. The company that had been my pride, my identity, my proof that I could create something meaningful. I sold it in 3 weeks for $320,000, less than half what it was actually worth. But the buyer knew I was desperate, and desperate people don't negotiate well. David was so grateful. He held me while I cried about losing my company. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry you have to do this for me." "I'd do anything for you," I told him, and I meant it. But $320,000 wasn't enough. So I sold our house, the house we'd bought together 7 years ago, the house where we'd planned to raise our children, the house with the garden I'd spent 3 years perfecting. Another $180,000 after we paid off the mortgage. We moved into a small apartment. David said he felt guilty about it, but I told him it didn't matter. Houses could be replaced. He couldn't. I sold my car, kept his because he needed it for doctor's appointments. I sold my jewelry, including my grandmother's ring that I'd promised myself I'd pass down to my daughter someday. I emptied my retirement accounts, took the tax penalties, didn't care. In 6 weeks,
I liquidated my entire life and raised $524,000, more than enough for the treatment. I gave it all to David. He was handling the medical payments, coordinating with the doctors, managing everything while I worked 3 freelance jobs to cover our basic living expenses. "You're saving my life," he told me one night as we lay in our tiny apartment bedroom. "I don't deserve you, Sarah." I kissed him. "Yes, you do. And you're going to beat this. We're going to have our life back." But something strange started happening around week 8. David's chemotherapy appointments were always on days when I was working. He'd come home exhausted, nauseous, exactly how you'd expect someone doing chemo to look. But he never lost his hair. "It's the new treatment protocol," he explained when I asked. "Not everyone loses their hair with immunotherapy." That made sense. I wasn't a doctor. What did I know? But then I noticed he was going out more. "Just to clear my head," he said. "The doctors say light exercise and social interaction help with the depression." I encouraged it. Of course I did. I wanted him to have whatever quality of life he could manage. I was working 16-hour days doing freelance marketing work, trying to rebuild something from nothing while my husband fought for his life. And then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday. I'd finished a project early, rare for me those days. David had texted me saying he was at a support group for cancer patients and would be home late. I decided to surprise him, pick him up, maybe take him for ice cream after, something to lift his spirits. I drove to the address he'd given me for the support group. It was a bar, an expensive bar downtown called the Azure Lounge. I thought maybe I'd gotten the address wrong, but his car was in the parking lot. Maybe the support group met at the bar? Some groups did that, right? I walked inside, and that's when I saw him.
David was sitting in a booth in the back corner. He wasn't hunched over in pain, wasn't pale, wasn't weak. He was laughing. He looked healthier than I'd seen him in months. His skin was tan, like he'd been spending time in the sun. His eyes were bright. His smile was wide. And he was with a woman, a beautiful blonde woman I'd never seen before. She was wearing a dress that cost more than our monthly rent, designer purse on the seat beside her, diamonds glittering at her neck and wrists. Shopping bags surrounded their table, expensive shopping bags. Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Tiffany & Co. My shopping bags, bought with my money, the money I'd given him for cancer treatment. They were drinking champagne. Champagne! My dying husband was drinking champagne with a woman who definitely wasn't me. I stood there in the doorway, frozen. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. David reached across the table and took her hand, brought it to his lips, kissed it while maintaining eye contact with her. The way he used to look at me before the diagnosis. That's when I understood. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once, like a building collapsing. There was no cancer. There had never been cancer. My husband, the man I'd destroyed my life to save, had faked a terminal illness to steal everything I had. I must have made a sound, or maybe he just felt me staring, but David's eyes suddenly lifted and met mine across the bar. For one perfect second, his face went absolutely white. The champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. The woman followed his gaze and turned to look at me. Her expression was confused at first, then understanding, then something that looked almost like pity. I walked toward their table. My legs moved on autopilot. I wasn't making decisions anymore. My body was just moving. "Sarah," David said, standing up so fast he knocked his chair backwards. "Sarah, I can explain. You're not sick." It wasn't a question. My voice sounded strange, flat, empty. Sarah, please, let me explain. You're not sick. The woman stood up too, grabbing her purse. I'm going to stay, I said, looking at her for the first time. I want you to stay. I want you to hear this too. She sat back down slowly, looking between David and me like she was watching a car accident. How long? I asked. Sarah? How long? The entire bar had gone quiet. Everyone was watching us now. David's face had gone from white to red. It's complicated. How long have you been pretending to have cancer while stealing my money? He didn't answer, but the woman did. 6 months, she said quietly. We've been together for 6 months. The exact amount of time since his diagnosis. And the money? I asked, still looking at David. The $524,000 I gave you for treatment? The woman's eyes widened. 500? She looked at David. You told me you got an inheritance. So she didn't know either. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Sarah, I can explain everything, David said, reaching for me. I stepped back. Don't touch me. I was going to pay you back. I have a business opportunity. You have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. You have 6 months to live. You're dying, David. Remember? That's what you told me. His mouth opened, closed. He had no response to that. Because what do you say when your dying act has been exposed? I looked at the shopping bags, at the champagne, at this woman wearing jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. My entire life, everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed, gone. Spent on champagne and designer handbags for his mistress? I'm calling the police. I pulled out my phone. Sarah, wait. And then I'm calling my lawyer. And then I'm calling everyone we know. Your family, my family, our friends, everyone. Sarah, please. And then, I said, my voice finally breaking, I'm going to make absolutely sure that you lose everything. The way you made me lose everything. I started dialing 911, and that's when David ran.
David didn't get far. The police found him at Monica's apartment. That was her name, Monica. 3 hours later. Turns out, faking a serious illness to defraud your spouse of $500,000 is several different crimes. Wire fraud, forgery, theft by deception. The district attorney was very interested in my case because David had been thorough. He'd forged medical documents, created fake doctor's appointments, even had a friend who worked at a medical supply company give him saline bags to bring home so I'd see his IV treatments. He'd planned this for months before he ever told me he was sick. The investigation uncovered everything. He'd met Monica at a casino 8 months before his diagnosis. She was a cocktail waitress who dreamed of a better life. David promised her that life. He just needed to get the money first. His plan was simple. Fake cancer, get me to liquidate everything, take the money, and disappear with Monica to start fresh somewhere else. Maybe Mexico, maybe Thailand, somewhere I'd never find him. He'd already bought the plane tickets. They were leaving in 2 weeks. The police found $347,000 still in his accounts. The rest had been spent on Monica, her apartment, her car, her clothes, her jewelry. He'd bought her everything I'd lost. I got the $347,000 back immediately. It was evidence, so it was frozen in an escrow account pending trial. But the other $177,000? Gone. Spent. Unrecoverable. David tried to make a deal. His lawyer called my lawyer. He'd plead guilty to lesser charges if I agreed not to pursue the maximum sentence. He'd pay back every penny over time. Tell him no, I said to my lawyer. Sarah, if he goes to trial and loses, he could get 10 years. If he takes the plea, tell him no. I wanted him to feel what I felt. That moment of absolute betrayal. That sickening realization that everything you believed was a lie. I wanted him in a courtroom, under oath, forced to explain to a judge and jury why he'd done this. The trial lasted 3 days. David's defense tried to paint me as a controlling wife who'd driven him to desperate measures. They tried to say the marriage was already failing. But then my lawyer played the recording. The recording I'd made on my phone that night at the bar before the police arrived. David's voice, clear and panicked. Sarah, I can explain everything. I was going to pay you back. I have a business opportunity. My voice. You have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. You have 6 months to live. You're dying, David. Remember? The silence that followed. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts.
David got 8 years in federal prison. Monica got 2 years for accessory to fraud and money laundering. Turns out she knew about the fake cancer after the first month, but kept quiet because she liked the lifestyle. I got $347,000 back, minus legal fees, minus the money I'd had to borrow to survive during the investigation. I netted about $280,000 of my original $524,000. I lost my business, my house, my car, my grandmother's ring, my retirement savings, my ability to trust anyone ever again. But I got something else too. I got the truth, and I got myself back. It took me 6 months after the trial to stop crying every day. 6 months to stop flinching every time I saw a couple holding hands. 6 months to stop wondering what I'd done wrong, what I'd missed, how I'd been so stupid. My therapist, yes, I needed therapy after this, helped me understand something important. I wasn't stupid. I was loving. And the fact that someone could weaponize my love against me wasn't my failure. It was his. I started rebuilding slowly. I took freelance consulting work, small projects at first, then bigger ones. Companies that had heard my story started reaching out, not out of pity, but because they saw someone who'd survived the unsurvivable and came back fighting. 2 years after David went to prison, I started a new business, smaller than my first one, but mine, built on my terms this time. I called it Phoenix Consulting because that's what I was, something that had burned to ashes and risen again. I never remarried. I dated occasionally, but I wasn't in a hurry. For the first time in my adult life, I was learning to be happy alone, to trust myself, to build a life that no one could take away because it didn't depend on anyone else. David sent me letters from prison. At first, they were angry, then apologetic, then desperate. I never responded to a single one. Monica got out after 18 months with good behavior. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved back to her hometown and got a job at a bank. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 years after everything happened, I was having coffee with a new client when she asked me the question everyone eventually asks. So, what made you start your own business? I could have lied, made up something simple and professional, but I didn't. My husband faked cancer and stole everything I had, so I had to rebuild from zero. She stared at me. You're joking. I'm not. That's horrible. It was, I agreed, but it also taught me something invaluable. What's that? I looked out the window at the city street, at all the people walking by with their own stories, their own betrayals, their own survivals. That I'm a lot stronger than I ever knew, and that the only person who can truly destroy your life is you. Everyone else can just take your stuff. She laughed, then stopped. Wait, you're serious?
Completely serious. David took my money, my house, my business, but he couldn't take my skills, my intelligence, my ability to rebuild. Those were always mine, and they still are. We signed the contract that afternoon, a $75,000 consulting project, the biggest deal I'd closed since starting over. That night, I went home to my small apartment, not as small as the one David and I had shared during his treatment, but not as big as our old house either, and I poured myself a glass of wine. Just one glass. I'd learned moderation the hard way. I sat on my balcony and looked at the city lights, and for the first time since that night at the Azor Lounge, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. David was in prison, Monica was rebuilding her life, and I was rebuilding mine. But the difference was that my rebuilding was real. My business was real. My friends were real. My life was real. Nothing about it was a lie. And that, I realized, was the real revenge. Not the trial, not the conviction, not the 8 years he'd spend behind bars. The real revenge was that I survived. I rebuilt. I thrived. While he lost everything by trying to steal mine. My phone buzzed. A text from a friend inviting me to dinner. Real friends this time. The kind who'd stood by me through the trial. The kind who'd helped me move into my new apartment. The kind who'd never once said, "I told you so," even though some of them had warned me about David years ago. I texted back, "Yes, I'll be there." I finished my wine, grabbed my keys, and headed out the door. To dinner, to friends, to life, to the future I built myself that no one could ever take away again. Because I'd learned the hardest lesson of all. The only life worth living is one you build yourself, on your own terms, with your own hands, from your own truth. Everything else is just someone else's lie.